Okay everyone, hopefully you're ready for this. This is going to be the major 7th chords movable. Now like I said when I taught the open versions of these, we did all 5 cage system shapes, but when we start to move it around the neck, what I want to do is I want to show you the 2 most used first, and then later we can add the rest. Just because it's kind of confusing when you're in the middle of performing, or if you're just trying to play something, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of versions of the same chord in your head. So it's good to have options, but at first I really believe in having just 1 or 2 options, and then you could build from there, because you'll always have these to go to, especially because they're closely related to, well, they are related to forms that you know the best. So the forms that we're going to go for today for major 7th are going to be based around the 4th form, which is the E shape, and the 2nd form, which is the A shape. You'll probably know when we first did bar chords, just major and minor, we did those same forms, and there's a reason for that. They're very playable, and like I said, they're used by most guitar players most of the time. So let's go ahead and get to the point where we're doing this with the major 7ths, and then the video to soon follow will be the minor 7ths. So you'll have a great balance of all these different movable shapes that you can do. Okay, first of all, let's take a look at the 4th form as a bar chord. So let's just do this at the 3rd fret, just because it's the most centered on the screen here, on this camera angle. Okay, very arbitrary reasons here. And what we're going to do is we're going to, first of all, re-examine the intervals that are inside of this form so that we can alter them just a little bit to get the chord that we're looking for today. So if you take a look at this, we have the root note, in this case it's G, then we have the 5th interval, then the octave, so the same as the root, then the major 3rd, the 5th, and another root note octave. 3 root notes in 1 chord shape. That's why that's such a big shape. Okay, now what do we need to do a major 7? We need to add a 7th interval. And you get that from playing the major scale of the corresponding chord, so G in this case. So we'll go G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. So F sharp is our 7th tone. We have to add that to the existing chord. Now that might require a little bit of changing around. It doesn't mean we can just add it instantly and always get the right thing. Because we're guitar players, we have limited fingering sometimes. We're not like piano players where we have all 10 fingers that we could use. Sometimes we have to modify things. Here's how we're going to do it in this case. We're still going to play the root note, G. But now we're going to do something very strange. We're going to skip this 5th interval completely, in this area at least. And we're going to go to the 4th string, 4th fret, and that is the F sharp, the 7th note that we were just talking about. So it's kind of weird, but we're going to go root note with our 1st finger. We're going to go 7th interval with our ring finger. Then we're going to still play the 3rd interval, the major 3rd, but we're going to use our pinky. Some people are probably think I'm joking about this shape. It seems too weird, but it's actually what we're going to do. Then our middle finger, our 2nd finger, is going to play the 2nd string 3rd fret, which is our 5th interval. So we still end up having a 5th. It's just in a different place. And then you end up with this. So if we start over, we have the root note, major 7, major 3rd, 5th. There's a few questions now. I can already hear them bubbling up. But what you need to do is, as you strum this, we're going to have to mute the 5th string. So to do that, just lightly touch it with the bottom of your index finger. Okay, so you're going to be actually fretting the G on the 6th string, but then just touching the 5th string below it. So it's just dead. Okay. It's a great sound, huh? A lot of people ask, well, can I just play the 1st string 3rd fret as well? Wouldn't that be another octave? You could, but it's kind of difficult to bar your middle finger to do that. Or some people ask if you could just use your thumb and then do this stuff where you just reconfigure it with other fingers. Totally fine as well. That's just kind of a strange, unorthodox way to play it with the thumb over the top. Even though it sounds good, it looks good, but it's really playable with the index finger playing the root note. And you don't always have to pick it, by the way. You could use fingers and do this stuff. That's how I like to do major 7th chords most of the time. Picking's fine, but you got to make sure you deaden the strings that you don't want. So in this case, we have to deaden the 5th string and the 1st string. So deaden the 1st string by touching it just a little bit with your index finger as well. So your index finger is doing a lot of muting work. All right, let's move that around a little bit. So we have G major 7. Move it up 2 frets, A major 7. 2 more frets, B major 7. If you move it back 1 fret, you have B flat major 7. So now you have 12 different major 7s you can do with the same form. So you can start with the open version first if you want to. If you go way back to that lesson, that's what we did. Then once you get to the 1st fret, start this new shape with the configurations we just went over. F major 7, F sharp major 7, G major 7. And I recommend climbing all the way to the top. When you get to the skinny frets, you're really going to have to squeeze those fingers together. But I play mandolin sometimes, and you just learn to make it work. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's going to be possible, but it is. Unless you're under the giant. Okay, let's go ahead and work that into some playing that we've been doing. So what I would do if I were you is I would take a normal major bar chord, 4th form, and then I would transition to the major 7th version, just to get the feel of the change like we did when we did the opens. Hear I hate to use the word richness, but the richness of that major 7th chord. It's a great sounding jazz chord. Okay, so work on that for a while, see if your fingers will agree with you, and then start to use them in progressions that you already play major chords with. So for example, if you go G, C, back and forth, you could go, instead of that, go here. Then bring it all the way up to the 8th fret, you have C major 7. I'm going to go back to fingers because I'm used to it. Listen to how great this sounds. Okay, you're in a new world if you start to utilize those chords. Okay, now it's time to look at the next form that we're going to do this with. Only 2 today, so you don't have to worry about 5 like you might be thinking. What we're going to do is we're going to take the second shape, the second form, and use that to make a major 7th chord. So why don't we go here to the 3rd fret, C, and let's play the typical major 2nd form. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another way is to bar across, if you remember that way. Great way to do it. Now, like before, we have to add a 7th interval to this chord shape. So let's climb from C and count up. C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, B is 7. And then your 8 or your 1 again is C. So we have to add a B to this existing chord shape. Okay, not too hard to do. Let's go over the intervals of the actual bar chord first. The one that we did is just a major. We have the root note, 5th, octave, major 3rd, 5th. All those are contained inside that. So if we were to just take this octave C and drop it back half a step, that's going to be our 7th interval. Let's add that to the mix now. So now we have root note, 5th, here's the B, the major 7. Just those 3 together. Sound pretty cool. But let's add that major 3rd, 2nd string, 5th fret with a pinky. And on this particular one, I like to bar across and hit this higher 5th as well. It's not mandatory, but it sounds crystallier. That's a word. It's crystally. Okay. So now we have the major 7 using the 2nd form. Fingering, if you want to do this again, that's fine. It always sounds like Steely Dan to me. When I do that, I use my thumb on the 5th string, the root note. I skip the 4th string, and I do the rest of the strings with the index finger, middle, and ring. Why? Because you're hitting the 5th here, so I feel I can skip it here if I want to. That's what it would sound like if you added that lower 5th and actually skip the high 5th. Just a little more I guess, crowded sounding. If you go for the higher fifth, it sounds a little bit cleaner. Okay, so that's going to be that shape. I recommend moving it around. And then I recommend going from the bar chord, let's say the second form on the 3rd fret, so it'll be C major, to C major 7. See if you can switch between the two. So we have this, or this. Remember, this is another way to play it. Switch. See if you can get a nice rotation between those two. Then move that around a little bit. Let's go to the 5th fret, just do a regular major bar chord, second form, major 7th version. The third thing I would do is I would go from the beginning of this lesson where we did the 4th form version and then try to go to the 2nd form version and switch between the two. So let's go back to the original big fat 4th form, and we're going to do the major 7th at the 3rd fret. Now instead of doing what we did earlier where we slid all the way up to the 8th fret for C major 7, instead we're just going to go to the 5th string 3rd fret and then play the 2nd form, and we have C major 7 here. So doesn't this seem easier maybe for some people to go from here? That's G major 7 to C major 7. Versus here, and then sliding all the way up here, you could still keep the same form, which is nice, but there's a lot of traveling going on between the chords, and you hear a lot of like string slides. Some people hate that sound. So to eliminate that, just switch between the two different forms. 4th form, major 7, 2nd form, major 7. Even picking sounds fine. It's a little brighter and bigger. Okay. So that's my recommendations for practicing major 7th bar chords, now movable chords, using the 4th form and the 2nd forms. Get good at that, and we'll move on to the minor 7s coming up. Okay, see you guys.